Hi folks, John Ferguson Smart here. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I talk a lot about how important it is to avoid getting UI details into your gherkin scenarios, into your cucumber scenarios. You want to avoid things like when I click on this button or when I enter this value into this field. You don't want that in your gherkin because it becomes way too detailed, way too long and complicated. And so what you really need to do instead is focus on the outcomes. But a question that often comes up is, in that case, how do you know that what you're supposed to implement? If these are executable specifications, how does a developer know that they need to enter these field values? How does a developer know that they need to enter a first name, a last name, and click on a button and they should see a confirmation dialog? That's waterfall thinking. That is an old school approach where we need to specify every little detail. I remember back in the 80s and 90s, that was how we did software, 80s in particular, where an analyst would write down this little document I remember the form of the paper, where they would fill out all the details of what the programmer needed to write, and the programmer would basically transcribe the code into COBOL. We don't do that anymore. Nowadays we work in an agile environment. Teams collaborate, teams work together. A UX design is plenty detailed enough for a developer to go away and implement that. And then hopefully, and this is another, I'll talk about this in another video, we also want lower level, what I call UI unit testing. We want checks and tests at the UI level for sure, but they are not acceptance criteria. We don't want acceptance criteria that we can enter these field values. That should just happen naturally in the flow. We don't need to specify that in our gherkin. In our gherkin, we really need to just focus on the flows and the outcomes that we're looking for. So when I create it, or not I, it would be when Carrie, the customer representative, creates a new customer, or when Fred, the financial analyst, records a trade. You don't, and you can maybe specify the details of that trade, but you don't want to say when he enters the code into this field, or when he enters a value into this field. You don't want to have all of that detail in your gherkin scenario. That'll be tested at a lower level inside your automation code, and that'll be specified in the UX design. A UX mockup is plenty detailed enough for developers to be able to build that. And so you don't need that at the gherkin level. So that's what I wanted to explain today. Thanks for listening.